Okay, so you want to own a self-storage facility. You picture a clean row of metal doors, a keypad at the gate, and hundreds of people paying every month to store boxes they barely remember owning. No kitchen staff, no fragile inventory, no customers sitting at tables for 3 hours. Just small rooms, automatic billing, and rent checks, arriving while the building quietly sits there. It looks like one of the simplest businesses in real estate. Here is what that picture does not show: the empty units that produce nothing, the property tax bill that rises whether occupancy does or not, the security system that has to work at 3 in the morning. The customer who stops paying leaves a unit full of worthless furniture and turns your rentable space into a legal and operational problem. A storage facility is not really a building full of boxes. It is a pricing, occupancy, and debt management machine that happens to have roll-up doors. Let us build a realistic planning scenario. Imagine a new owner evaluating a facility in a mid-sized United States metro area in 2026. Every number in this story is an estimate, not a verified market quote. Land, construction, rent, insurance, and financing can vary by roughly 20 to 40%, depending on the city, the property, and the exact year. That uncertainty is not a footnote. It is the business. Start with the romantic version. You buy 2 or 3 acres near a growing suburb, build 700 units, install cameras and an access gate, and hire 1 manager. The average unit appears to rent for enough that the gross revenue looks enormous. If 500 occupied units average around $120 a month, the calculator shows $60,000 every month. That is $720,000 a year before late fees, tenant insurance, locks, moving supplies, or truck rentals. It is easy to look at that number and assume the property is a cash machine. But gross rent is not cash flow. Gross rent is the number that attracts you into the deal. Cash flow is what remains after the land, the concrete, the debt, the taxes, the payroll, the advertising, the repairs, and the empty units have all taken their share. The expensive part is not the steel door. It is the location underneath it. A storage unit in the wrong place is not a cheap room. It is a permanent vacancy. Most customers choose storage based on convenience, not architecture. They want something close to home, close to a moving route, or close to the small business they operate. That means your true market may be only a few miles around the property. Inside that small radius, you need enough renters, enough apartment turnover, enough home renovation, enough divorce, enough downsizing, enough student movement, and enough small business activity to keep hundreds of units occupied. A city can be growing overall while your exact corner remains invisible. A beautiful facility behind a highway barrier without easy turning access can lose to an older competitor that is simply easier to reach. In a 2026 planning scenario, 2 or 3 acres in a secondary metro might be estimated anywhere from $1 million to $4 million, with much higher numbers near dense urban corridors. That range is wide because you are not buying dirt. You are buying traffic access, zoning permission, visibility, drainage, utilities, and the legal right to operate storage at that address. Zoning is where the first illusion often breaks. Cities may dislike self-storage because it creates fewer jobs and less sales tax activity than retail or mixed-use development. A parcel may look perfect and still require a conditional use permit. Neighborhood hearings, traffic studies, landscaping requirements, or exterior design upgrades. The project can spend months carrying land and legal costs before construction begins, and approval is never guaranteed. Then comes the building. A simple drive-up facility is cheaper than a climate-controlled multi-story building. But neither is just a collection of metal walls. You need site work, stormwater control, fire access, lighting, electrical service, paving, drainage, fencing, cameras, Gates, elevators, hallways, climate systems, and software connecting every tenant to the correct door. For a rough 2026 scenario, a basic single-story facility might cost an estimated $60 to $110 per rentable square foot to build. A multi-story climate-controlled property might land somewhere around $110 to $200 per rentable square foot. Difficult soil, expensive labor, strict design standards, or urban construction can push the range high. Now do the uncomfortable math. Suppose the project contains 80,000 rentable square feet at an estimated $130 per rentable square foot. Construction alone approaches $10.4 million. Add land, permits, professional fees, financing costs, opening marketing, and a contingency reserve. The total project could easily become a $12 to $17 million scenario before the first customer stores a single chair. That is the first structural truth. The units are small, the investment is not. Existing facilities avoid construction risk, but they introduce a different problem. You inherit somebody else's rent roll, somebody else's deferred maintenance, and somebody else's version of occupancy. A property advertised as 92% occupied can still be weak. If many tenants are paying discounted legacy rents, if delinquency is high, or if the unit mix is wrong for current demand, occupancy is not one number. Physical occupancy tells you how many units contain belongings. Economic occupancy tells you how much of the potential rent you actually collect. A facility can be physically full and economically disappointing if the owner filled it with deep discounts, free months, or tenants who are behind on payment. Picture two buildings. Facility A is 95% occupied, but the average tenant pays $90 because rates were never increased. Facility B is 88% occupied, but the average tenant pays $125. On 1,000 units, Facility B may collect meaningfully more revenue with fewer customers, less gate traffic, and less wear. This is where storage starts to look less like ordinary real estate and more like airline pricing. The room does not change, but the price can. A 5x10 unit may be offered online at a low introductory rate to attract a new customer, then gradually move toward the property's target rate after. The tenant has stored their belongings, and the inconvenience of moving becomes real. That mechanism can be profitable, but it is fragile. Raise rates too slowly, and you leave money on the table. Raise them too quickly, and tenants move out, post angry reviews, or trigger regulatory attention. The business depends on understanding the difference between a customer who is price-sensitive today and a customer who values avoiding the trouble of moving everything tomorrow. Let us model a mid-sized property with 700 units. Assume, purely as a scenario, that the unit mix averages $115 per occupied unit each month. At 90% physical occupancy, 630 units are filled. That produces about $72,400 in monthly scheduled rent before discounts and delinquency. If economic occupancy is only 94% of that scheduled amount, actual collected rent falls closer to $68,000. Add perhaps $3,000 to $7,000 from tenant insurance, commissions, administrative fees, late fees, locks, and moving supplies. The property might collect roughly $71,000 to $75,000 in a normal month under this scenario. Now, subtract the expenses that never appear in the fantasy. A manager and part-time support may cost an estimated $6,000 to $12,000 monthly after payroll burden. Property tax might average $8,000 to $18,000 a month, depending on the jurisdiction and assessed value. Insurance, utilities, software, security, repairs, landscaping, pest control, and marketing could add another $10,000 to $20,000. Before debt, the property might produce $35,000 to $50,000 in monthly operating income. That sounds excellent. Then, the loan arrives. Storage projects are often financed with substantial debt because few owners want to place $12 or $15 million of cash into one property. Imagine a scenario with $10 million of debt at a rate somewhere between 6 and 8%, amortized over a long period. Annual debt service might land roughly between $800,000 and $1 million, depending on the exact terms. That is $67,000 to $83,000 every month. Suddenly, the property that appeared to generate $40,000 before debt may not cover its financing at all. This is the part first-time buyers miss. A facility can be operationally healthy and financially dangerous at the same time. The building works, the customers pay, the loan structure still breaks the deal. The key ratio is debt service coverage. In simple terms, lenders want the property's operating income to exceed the annual loan payment by a safety margin. If the property produces $900,000 of annual operating income and owes $850,000 in debt service, the margin is almost non-existent. One tax increase, one insurance renewal, or one occupancy dip can erase it. A more conservative scenario might require operating income to cover debt service by roughly 25 to 40%. That buffer is not wasted money. It is the space that keeps a temporary problem from becoming a forced sale. This is why lease-up matters so much. A. New facility does not open at 90% occupancy. It may open nearly empty and spend 2 to 4 years, sometimes longer, building a customer base. During that period, the expenses arrive at full speed, while the revenue arrives 1 unit at a time. Imagine opening month. The lights are on, the manager is paid, the loan payment is due, the property tax clock is running, but only 40 units are occupied. At $115 each, scheduled rent is less than $5,000. The building may be losing tens of thousands every month while looking completely finished from the road. Construction completion is not business completion. Lease-up is the second construction project, except this one is built customer by customer. Owners usually fight that gap with promotions. First month free, half price for 3 months, no administration fee, free lock. These offers bring people through the gate, but they create a hidden difference between move-in rent and stabilized rent. A facility can report strong move-in activity while still collecting far less cash than its headline price suggests. Unit mix is another silent variable. Owners love large units because the monthly rent looks bigger, but a property filled with oversized units may struggle if the local market is mostly apartment residents needing small spaces. The wrong mix creates a strange situation where the facility appears busy, but the most valuable square footage remains empty. Revenue per square foot matters more than rent per unit. Suppose a 5x5 unit rents for $60. That is $2.40 per square foot each month. A 10x20 unit renting for $220 earns only $1.10 per square foot. The bigger unit brings more money from one customer, but the smaller unit may monetize the building more efficiently. Small units require more doors, more hallways, more locks, more customer accounts, and more management. Large units are simpler, but can be less productive per square foot. The correct mix depends on local demand, not a universal formula. Now watch what happens when supply enters the market. Storage facilities can look attractive precisely because they appear easy to operate. That attracts developers. A neighborhood with rising rents and high occupancy becomes a signal. New projects are approved. 2 years later, several thousand new units open almost at once. Demand may still be growing, but supply can grow faster. The old facility responds with discounts. The new facility offers free months. Online advertisements become more expensive. Occupancy falls from 92% to 84%. That 8-point change sounds small. On 700 units, it means 56 additional vacancies. At $115 per unit, that is more than $6,000 of scheduled monthly rent gone before promotions. And perhaps far more after pricing pressure spreads across the remaining units. Fixed costs do not fall by 8%. The gate still opens. The manager still works. The tax bill remains. The loan remains. This is why storage can move from comfortable to stressed without any dramatic event. Nothing burns down. A few more doors simply stay empty. The same sensitivity appears in rent. If average collected rent falls by $10 across 600 occupied units, monthly revenue drops $6,000. Combine that with 56 vacancies, and the property may lose more than $12,000 a month. Annualized, that is roughly $144,000 of pressure from changes that may look minor in a brochure. That is not a market correction. That is the owner's cash reserve disappearing one ordinary month at a time. Delinquency creates a different kind of pressure. When a tenant stops paying, the unit does not instantly return to inventory. The owner must follow state-specific notice rules, waiting periods, lien procedures, auction requirements, and documentation. During that time, the unit is occupied but not producing reliable cash. People imagine abandoned units as treasure boxes sold at auction. Most are not. They contain used furniture, old clothes, broken appliances, paperwork, and personal objects with little resale value. Auction proceeds may cover part of the unpaid balance, but the facility can still lose rent, labor, cleaning cost, and legal time. A delinquent unit is worse than an empty unit because an empty unit can be rented today. A delinquent unit is trapped between a customer problem and a legal process. The value is not in repainting the doors. The value is in repairing the income statement. Imagine buying a property with $1 million of annual revenue and $500,000 of operating expenses. Operating income is $500,000. If better management raises collected revenue by 8% and cuts expenses by 5%, operating income might rise by roughly $105,000. In commercial real estate, that extra income can create a much larger change in property value. At an illustrative capitalization rate of 7%, $105,000 of additional annual income could imply roughly $1.5 million of added value. That is a scenario, not a guarantee, but it explains why. Experienced operators focus obsessively on small changes in rent and expense. $10 more per unit does not look dramatic. Across hundreds of units multiplied by 12 months, then capitalized into property value, it becomes the difference between an ordinary asset and a successful investment. The same mathematics works in reverse. A tax reassessment adds $100,000 of annual expense. At the same 7% illustrative rate, the property may lose more than $1.4 million of implied value even. If every building and every tenant remains exactly the same. The doors did not change. The valuation did. This is why financing at purchase matters as much as operations after purchase. A buyer can improve the property and still lose money if the debt resets at a much higher rate. Short-term loans, variable rates, and aggressive refinancing assumptions can turn a good storage business into a bad investment. Picture an owner buying at a low interest rate and planning to refinance after 3 years. Occupancy improves, rents rise, the business does its job. But market rates are 2 points higher when the loan matures. The new payment absorbs nearly all the additional operating income. Operational success becomes financial disappointment. That is not because storage failed. It is because the capital structure demanded a future that never arrived. Let us build 2 full scenarios for the same 700-unit facility. In the stronger case, occupancy stabilizes near 92%. Average collected rent reaches $120. Ancillary income adds 6%. Operating expenses remain around 42% of effective revenue. Debt was fixed at a manageable rate with a healthy reserve. Under that estimated scenario, annual effective revenue might approach $1 million, and operating income could land around $550,000 to $600,000. If annual debt service is $400,000, the property may produce $150,000 to $200,000 before major capital projects and taxes. That is a solid business. It is not effortless. It is not unlimited. But it can reward disciplined ownership. Now, the stressed case. New supply opens nearby. Occupancy falls to 83%. Average collected rent slips to $108 after promotions. Marketing rises. Insurance renews higher. Property taxes reassessed. Operating expenses move toward 50% of effective revenue. Annual operating income might fall toward $350,000. If debt service remains $400,000, the property is now short before replacing a roof, resurfacing pavement, or repairing climate systems. The same facility with the same doors and nearly the same number of customers has moved from cash flow to cash drain. The gap between those scenarios is not created by one giant mistake. It is created by occupancy, rent, expenses, and debt each moving slightly in the wrong direction. So, should you own one? In the right location, bought or built at the right cost, financed conservatively, and managed with real pricing discipline, self-storage can be a durable business. The demand comes from ordinary life events that never completely disappear. People move, businesses expand, families inherit, homes get renovated, apartments stay small. But the business becomes dangerous when the simple appearance encourages simple underwriting. High occupancy does not guarantee high income. High income does not guarantee debt coverage. A full facility can be underpriced. A beautiful facility can be badly located. A growing city can still be oversupplied. A profitable operation can still be a poor investment at the wrong purchase price. The owner has to survive three different realities at once. The physical property, where gates, roofs, cameras, elevators, and climate systems must work. The operating business, where rent, occupancy, churn, and delinquency must be controlled. And the capital structure, where interest rates and loan maturities can overwhelm everything else. Ignore any one of them, and the quiet building becomes loud very quickly. Now return to the picture from the beginning. The long row of clean doors, the empty office, the monthly payments arriving while nobody seems to be working. That picture can be real, but only after millions of dollars, years of lease-up, hundreds of pricing decisions, and a carefully structured loan have made it possible. You are not buying metal rooms for forgotten furniture. You are buying a small local monopoly on convenience, then trying to keep every square foot priced correctly while debt waits in the background. The boxes are visible. The economic machine is occupancy, rent, and time. And the owner who understands that does not ask whether the building is full. The owner asks whether every occupied door is producing enough cash to protect the property when the next empty door appears.